BC football has their 2025 schedule, and it looks like 8 wins could be in the cards.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Big day today. We're going to talk about Doug Marone leaving for the NFL, explain where he's going, some changes in the staff that we've heard about, and more there. We're going to also look at the schedule as the 2025 Boston College football schedule is out, and I'll give you my reactions, my thoughts about a bunch of different things. You're going to want to hear my reaction to this today. So let's kick it off. ACC on Monday from 9 to 11 o'clock revealed their complete schedule. Now, we knew ahead of time that BC was going to play Stanford in September. We knew they were going to play Cal in September. We knew they were going to play Notre Dame in November. But there was all the in-betweens. Where was the bye week? You know, who was that extra team going to be? We heard it was going to be UConn. Was it going to be UConn? All sorts of good things like that. And on Monday, we got the entire schedule. And I'm going to put it up so you can see it. If you're on YouTube, you know you're getting the whole kit and caboodle here. But if you're listening on Spotify or the apps, you're still getting a great experience here. And here you go. First of all, before I get into what the schedule looks like, let me just say shout out to the BC creative staff for this graphic that they created, because it's incredible. If you look at some of the other schools, look at like what Clemson did and what Syracuse did. BC knocks this out of the park. It's cool. It's classic. It's unique. And that's the schedule right there. So first thing that I wanted to talk about was where the bye week lands. And this is the first piece of bad news because the bye week is in September this year. Now, September 20th, after your trip to Stanford. Now, on one hand, that's kind of nice, because you're making a trip across the country and you're coming back to play at home. It would be nice to have that break there. But the grind of a football season. You'd love to have it in October somewhere where it's much more manageable, where you've had guys, I forget who on the offensive line was banged up last year, but you had that bye week at the right spot. It helped with injuries. I don't like it this early. It's after 3 games. That seems really early to me. But again, it's a flip side type of thing. Do you want the break after a West Coast swing? Probably. It just stinks it's that early. There's actually 2 bye weeks. The second bye week is in November after the SMU game, actually after the Georgia Tech game. So that is on November 22nd. And I believe the end of the schedule sets up nicely for the end of the Thanksgiving break for students. One thing that we noticed, we saw this with the UNC and Pitt game this year, is when the kids leave for the holidays, they do not come back. It's just the way things work. So if you gave up a home game for where they have Syracuse this year, you will be getting a half-empty alumni stadium, very sporadic student support. They don't have to worry about this now. You have your home games, and you don't have to worry about the Thanksgiving break because you're going to be on the road. Syracuse can eat that now. So that's good. And I like that you end the year with Syracuse as well. I think that's if you're going to have that every year, I think it's supposed to be rivalry weekend. You get games like Florida State and Florida, the Iron Bowl, Georgia Tech. You have a lot of different regional rivalry games, and you're trying to build up Syracuse and BC. It doesn't come to those. It doesn't come to that level, but it should get more precedence in terms of your scheduling. So to have Syracuse to end the season is a positive as well. And while we're talking about Syracuse has a monster schedule this year. Getting them at the end of the year is actually really nice because while BC plays 3 playoff teams this year, Syracuse plays 2. No, they play. I think they play 3 as well. My apologies. They play 4 playoffs teams. They play Tennessee. I totally forgot about them. Clemson, SMU, and Notre Dame. So after their cakewalk 2024 schedule that made Fran Brown look like a genius, I get the sense that the 2025 season, unless they can figure things out, A, without Kyle McCord, and B, against that murderer's row of a schedule, it's going to be pretty tough for Syracuse in this upcoming year. But you get them last in the season, so that's good too. Now, the next piece to talk about is the out-of-conference schedule that BC has, which we knew 3 games going into this. We knew they were going to play against Michigan State in Michigan State. They're going to host Fordham to start the season, and they were going to have Notre Dame at home in November. We knew all of that. That was all, reported earlier. The big question was BC was getting bumped by UMass. We knew because UMass is joining the MAC conference. They had to readjust their schedule. They had so many lucrative buy games in there that BC's buy game probably was worth less money. They booted BC. Makes sense. So who does BC get? According to Brett McMurphy, it's a 4-game series against UConn. And it's going to be 2 games at home and 2 games away. This one will be at home. Now, I've heard some people, and I get it, that they don't like that we gave 2 away games to UConn. Now, looking at why that happened, it's not too hard to see how. Who had all the power in this scheduling arrangement? UConn did. UConn, if BC cannot get UConn here, they're risking having to play 2 FCS games like they did in 2015. And one of those games is basically a waste of time. You had to get a FBS team to help your bowl eligibility. And UConn had all the power. If they said no to BC, BC is up a creek. So BC had to make concessions here. And I'm guessing that concession was 2 away games. Now, what I would have loved to have seen is a away game in Stores and a game at Foxborough. But again, we're not in the power to do that. You get your games, you get your games. UConn won 9 games last year, so they're in good shape. They're a pretty good team. They've done a nice job in the transfer portal. I just saw they landed Tai Chan, who I know a lot of you folks were asking about, and I've told you if you're an Eagle Insider that was never going to happen. But hey, he's a former 4-star. That's nice for them. And so things are looking pretty good for UConn. That's going to be a tough game. You got to be playing on your best, and it looks like it's like in that trap game area. You're playing between Clemson and at Louisville. So you have your big game against Clemson, which could be, if you're looking at that schedule, it could be the red bandana game. And you're playing against Louisville, 2 good teams. So you can't look past UConn there. That's one other piece. The last piece, and I'll give you my predictions in a minute, is there are no weekday games. And if I had a soundboard, I would be playing the cheering sounds right now because I hate weekday games. You look at the schedule, it's all weekend games for this year. Hallelujah. Saturday games are better than Friday games, which are way better than Thursday games. So cheer yourself for that one. No weird weekday games this year. And I think that is, you have to look way back in the schedule to see if you can find when that ever happened again. I don't see it, but that's great. Now, in a moment, I'm going to get into the schedule. I'm going to look at what I think BC could do in 2025, give you some early predictions and last thoughts on that. We'll get into that in just a moment. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, you know that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl. That's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Bet that $5, and if you win, $200 bucks in bonus bets are yours. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who are listening on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. When you're done with this episode, if you are looking for a second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade, who talks everything college basketball. If you're done with BC and you're looking for some good college basketball talk, don't involve your Eagles, check out Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, welcome back. I apologize if I sound like I have a frog in my throat. I've had a head cold for like the last 2 days. It got worse last night, but I should be good to talk more about this schedule. So let's get into it. Now, the big question that everyone's asking is, what does BC, what is the early predictions for next year? Can Boston College break the 7-win curse that they've had? And the way the schedule looks, I like how this is setting up for potentially 8 wins. First of all, one issue that I was looking at the schedule, when you have those 3 playoff teams, SMU, Clemson, and Notre Dame, I was very concerned that they were going to be lined up. I thought that there was a chance that you had all in a row, bing, bing, bing. But in fact, you have them nicely spread out a little bit. You have a nice break between Clemson and Notre Dame, but you have Notre Dame and SMU back to back. So the September games, I said right off the bat, I think there's a potential that you could go 4-0 in September. Fordham is an FCS school. You're going to beat them. Michigan State, I think it's tough because you're on the road. That's the first piece. You're playing a Big Ten team on the road, a team that you barely beat last year, but you don't have Thomas Castellanos again. And I think with a much more measured offense, you're putting yourself in a better chance of winning that game. I do. I think the reason that Michigan State stuck around in that was they let Aiden Childs kind of stay on the field way too long. And Castellanos had one of those games where he was inconsistent at best. So I think they could win that. I think they're definitely going to beat Stanford. And as I said, because Stanford was 3-9 last year, I don't see them getting better this year. I still think it's going to be a down year for the Cardinal. And then California, they lost their star running back. They lost. I apologize. Jade Knott is coming back, so they have a very good running back, but they lost their star quarterback. Sorry, I knew Ott was coming back. Fernando Mendoza ended up in Indiana. That's a tough game, but it's a home. I still think you could potentially win that. If you go 4-0 in September, that is a way to start your season. You could potentially go 5-0 when you play Pitt. I don't know what Pitt has next year. They have Eli Rothstein coming back as quarterback. Nothing that they did last year really impressed me. I think you're playing in Pittsburgh. There's a potential of 5 right there. Then Clemson. I don't think you're beating Clemson. Don't think so. Clemson is going to have the best quarterback in the country, including Klubnik. I'd love to see BC win a game against, one of these playoff teams. I just don't think it's going to be Clemson. I just don't. Then you get UConn. Don't sleep on this game because it's UConn. They play BC tough every year. Jim Moore is a very good coach. And they're going to be amped up. This is their Super Bowl. I see that every time you play UConn is that they think of this game as their Super Bowl. They're going to be amped up for this, but I still think you're going to beat them. Then you have Notre Dame and SMU. Notre Dame is if you're going to pick between all 3 playoff games that you could win, I honestly believe Notre Dame might be the most beatable team out of the 3. They lost almost their entire offensive line, and I know they're going to probably rebuild with the guys that they have. They lost their quarterback, obviously Riley Leonard, I believe, is heading to the NFL, but they still have Jeremiah Love, who is, if Jade Knott's not the best offensive running back in the game next year, he's up there. And if BC's running defense struggles, he's going to be a major issue. So I'm going to put them down as a loss. Sorry. They're going to lose that one. I still think Kevin Jennings is elite. I think he's a very good quarterback. I don't think they're going to beat SMU either. That leaves Georgia Tech and Syracuse. So Georgia Tech is going to be tough. Uh, I still think they can win that game though. They lost a really good running. Their best wide receiver, Eric Singletary, sorry, to Auburn. They brought in a really good one. I think his name is Eric Rivers from FIU. They brought in some talent, but I still think you could win that. And if you don't, you beat Syracuse. There's your 8 wins. So I'm thinking BC wins 8 games. I think you look at the schedule. The way that Bill O'Brien set up his team last year, where there was no games that you were completely out of last year. They battled everyone. Even the Virginia Tech game that they were down 28-0, they stormed back in that game. They had a potential to tie that. That bodes well for a team. You're building culture. You're building this belief that you're never out of games. Now there's tougher games on their schedule this year. You have, instead of one playoff team, you have 3. But Bill O'Brien has that mentality that we're never out of this. That I say that they're going to win those 8 games, but I look at some of these other games. You could knock off a Notre Dame at home. You could stun Louisville on the road. There's potential all over the place. Again, the fun of projecting ahead of time with a schedule like this is, and I haven't done it and I should, is go back and listen to our projections at the beginning of last year. Well, last year I was talking about Jeff Hafley as the head coach because he was the head coach when this came out. But they're never right. Because last year we were looking at Florida State as an automatic loss. And now you look back at that and go, that was the easiest game on your schedule. You would have never have known that looking back in January. So it's tough. There's some tough games on there. I'm not going to deny that. I'm also going to say I like the way this is setting up. Now we'll talk about, as obviously we have months to go here. We have 6 months, 7 months to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this team, how that lines up against other programs. We'll have Mitch Wolf of Eagle Insider on. He's going to give his thoughts on all that. But I like how this ends up. As I said, no weekday games. Yay! No home game during this Thanksgiving break, which basically negates home field advantage. Yay! You have an early bye game. Boo. Not good. You split up your 3 playoff teams a little bit. Could have done a little bit better, but you're not going to complain. But I look at the schedule. If Bill O'Brien can get the offensive line okay, if the defensive line, he has enough weapons to make it manageable, this team should be okay. I don't think this is going to be a huge step back for BC. In fact, I think Grayson James is going to be fine. Or if it's Dylan Lonergan, he'll be fine. And that they have enough power to win 8 games here. I really do believe this is going to be the season that ends that 7-game drought. And you want to get as you saw last year, you want to get the 8 games before the bowl game. Because the bowl game could be a gigantic crapshoot. You do not want to rely on 8 wins at the bowl game because you never know who's going to opt out. I don't know by looking at this roster who could not play because they're looking at the NFL next year. Could it be like Lewis Bond or somebody else on the defensive side of the ball? But you don't want to go in hoping that that's going to be the reason you win. So you want to get that ahead of time. I think the schedule, while tough, I think this team is tough, and I think they can do it. In our final segment, let's look at some of the coaching staff changes that have gone on in BC. It's not huge, but it's definitely worth talking about. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a Turbo Report who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every time. every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All you can get is the most money back guaranteed. So no waiting, no worrying, no wondering. Now that is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with the TurboTax full-time service. Real-time updates only available on the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I appreciate each and every one of you who have made us your daily listen. If you're at the gym, if you're in the car, we are about 20, 25 minutes every single day to talk about Boston College sports. Really high emphasis on football, but hey, I was ripping on Earl Grant yesterday and talking hockey too. So it's not just football here. Sometimes we do talk about the other sports, but this is a football centric episode because the schedule came out today and there's more football news as senior analyst of game strategy, Doug Marone on Boston College, is heading to the NFL. He is joining the New England Patriots staff. We don't know what role. He could be an offensive line coach because he has a history of that. He could be just an analyst or assistant head coach or assistant coach, excuse me. Don't know what he's going to be, but he's leaving. Now, Marone, he was a behind the scene guy at BC to the point where I was at dozen practices last year. I had to be pointed out who he was. he was very much in the mix of things, but you just never saw him. But he's a quality loss, I think. He and Bill O'Brien go all the way back to 1995 at Georgia Tech. They're best friends. That's the reason he came to help Bill. They know each other. I believe Bill O'Brien's wife helped introduce the Maroons together. Doug and his wife. So they've gone all the way back. They work together in Alabama. They know each other very, very well. And, he's a valuable NFL head coach that you had on your staff. You worked with Jacksonville. He was a head coach at Syracuse. He has experience everywhere. So losing him is noticeable. He's an analyst, though. So it's not like you're losing one of your key recruiters or your key positional players, but a valuable voice, I would say, in your room. So people are asking me, like, who are they going to replace him with? With analysts, I have no idea. I honestly don't know. There could be new coaches that are out there that are just looking for spots to land. I've mentioned Don Brown before. Obviously, he's not going to help with the offensive line, but maybe he comes in. Maybe there's other guys out there that are just looking for something to do this year that fill a need, that are smart, know what they're doing, that you can bring in. But we'll have to wait to see who Bill O'Brien knows. He's got a huge tree of coaches that he's aware of, that he's connected with, that he trusts, that he can bring in. So I think they could find somebody. But Doug Marone worked a lot, I think, as well, assisting with the offensive line. I like Matt Applebaum. I know some of you have mixed feelings about him. I think he's a very good offensive line coach. I think he'll be fine. But when you lose a veteran voice like that, you can't deny that it's a bit of a loss. So we'll have to see who they bring in. There's plenty of coaches out there that I'm sure are looking for spots that maybe they can fill that role. Now, the other coach that is leaving, and I'm guessing a lot of you guys are going to be bummed about this one, is Will Blackmon is gone. Will Blackmon was a senior analyst on defense, obviously a legendary Boston College player, both offensively and defensively, who went on to have a big career with the Giants, Packers, and Jaguars in the NFL. I know folks are bummed because it's Will Blackmon, but he played a very small role. I mean, he didn't have a huge role on the defense. He was not a positional coach, so it's not like you're losing a big name. He's an up and comer, sure. Yeah, he's a guy that's going to hopefully become a good coach, but he's going to have to play that role, which he's doing, which is when you're a young coach coming up, you got to bounce around a lot. You got to get experiences, and that's what he's doing. He's going to Korean Lutheran High School in California. For what position? I don't know. I don't think he even said it in his tweet, but he's gone. Analysts, those you can find. You'll find analysts. They're going to come in. I know he's a bum. It's bummer because he's a BC guy, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Your staff right now is completely intact. You have all the guys that you want coming back, and hopefully he'll find himself a good spot in California. So that wraps up our episode for today. Thank you all for listening, and make sure you check out Eagle Insider for more details. We have some recruiting news up there. We've had basketball and scheduling updates, all that good stuff. We've had it all up there. Our message board is bar none the best out there for BC sports. Check that out. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. And make sure you are following Locked On Boston College on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Love to have you guys here. We are daily Boston College podcast. We do this 5 days a week. I've done, I think, close to 1,000 episodes, which is crazy. I'm crazy, man. I love talking BC sports with you all, and I'm glad you all make us part of your daily routine. I'll see you guys all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.